Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, women deserve equality. Also, the ETF revenue dips. And some lawmakers want to do away with no taxes on overtime pay.
What we've got here is failure to communicate. Some men you just can't reach.
I guess it's just a new way to rob the workers. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by Susan Britt, research guru extraordinaire, and Josh Moon, investigative reporter and columnist at APR. Welcome.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, y'all.
Josh, you wrote about this week, and it's one of those things where you wonder how despicable people can be, you know. And so Anthony Daniels, the Democrat Anthony Daniels, the minority leader, came up with a brilliant idea to stop taxing folks on overtime. And it's been a very successful program. However, excuse me, some of our Republican lawmakers have now decided, oh, that's too much of a giveaway. We need to tax these working people more for their overtime. And Josh, you wrote about just how awful that is, that they want to let this bill expire that is helping so many working families in Alabama.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, there are a whole lot of working parts to this, okay? And all of them are pretty terrible compared on what they're trying to do to hurt working folks out there with this bill that was essentially a 5% raise to all of these people who went out and said, hey, I'll work more hours to help my family. You know, I want to do this to bring in more money. I'll take the extra hours that we need at the plant because we're in an unprecedented time of worker shortages here in our state, and these folks these companies are looking for people to work the extra hours to get the job done. And so what they've been having to do is go out and hire temp agencies to come in and bring in temporary workers that were getting no benefits, you know, a little bit of pay, and didn't necessarily know the system as well as their permanent workers did. And so now this, instead of having to do that, you've got a whole bunch of people who are volunteering for this. So when we put this bill together, when the Democrats put this bill together, Anthony Daniels and his team put it together and said, took it to the budget office and said, how much would this cost? And the estimation came back and it was going to be around $80 million a year or so. And the way they got to that was judging how much tax revenue they were pulling in off the overtime pay in previous years that employers were paying out.
Right.
Okay. But once this happened and the 5% went in, they said, hey, we can make a lot more money doing this now. We're willing to work the hours.
Yeah.
And so that they've taken this on. So let's be clear about what they're talking about here. They're talking about taking money that was never there.
Right, exactly.
They were never going to get this $300 million that they're talking about, because it has ballooned up now that where they're not going to get $300 and some odd million. They were never going to get it before. The workers weren't working the overtime.
Right.
So it didn't belong there. Let me tell you what did belong in there. $100 million that's going to the Choose Act so we can send the rich kids to private school. That's what's going in there.
Well, and that's the thing, Susan.
Well, it is. I mean, we're talking about just $100 million just for the first year or two there. It's going to balloon up to somewhere around $500 million. Obviously, the people that are against this overtime bill are people who never worked a job where they had an hourly wage, or they have never been an employer, because once you get into overtime, you're not talking about getting paid time and a half. You're paying time and a half in taxes. It's not worth it for people to work overtime. On the other hand, you've got businesses that are having to hire temp people because they don't have enough workers that will work the overtime to get the job done, which means they have to pay that person, pay the taxes, and pay the temp agency. I mean, obviously these people don't understand how actual hourly working wages work.
Well, let's be quite clear. The main a person who wants to kill this and allow it to sunset is Senator Arthur Orr from Decatur. I mean, this guy.
He's an attorney. He doesn't know
this
about
guy's
hourly
an
wages.
attorney. He's got a cushy job. He has got all kinds of deals going all over the place. And I'm not picking on Arthur Orr, but I mean, he's the one that's been, Josh, primarily behind trying to kill this bill. And because the ETF, the Education Trust Fund, is not bringing in as much revenue, but it's not the overtime that's doing it. I mean, they are lying about it and trying to make you believe that it is, but it's not.
No, and I'm again, you're right. Arthur Orr has led the charge against this thing. He led the charge against it when it went in. He tried to cap it. If you recall, Governor Kay Ivey removed the cap when it went to her desk. He was going to cap it, I think, at $25 million, which would have been nothing when he would have been worth passing the bill. And then Governor Kay Ivey removed that cap and sent it back to them and made them repass it. So yeah, he has been against this, but he's gotten some help, and it really drives me nuts to watch them do this and to then pretend to be pro-worker.
Yeah.
If you'll recall, there was another candidate who picked up this no tax on overtime thing. Do you recall which candidate picked this thing up? It was a national candidate. It's a guy that's well known in this state of Alabama, if people remember, who had a grand idea back during the campaign for president to say, hey, I'm not going to tax tips on for waitresses, and I'm not going to tax overtime pay for hourly workers.
Yeah.
And that was one man named Donald John Trump.
Yeah.
And apparently the Republicans in Alabama are against this thing that Donald John Trump was for.
Maybe we ought to let him know about that.
Yeah, maybe we need to let President-elect Trump know that Arthur Orr and the gang want to kill that deal.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to move on to something real quick, and then this is another travesty. And the way it works in Alabama, and you all know this, is that the courts are financed by the fees and fines that they take from the people that, break the law, commit, or need licenses and things like that. That's where the money comes from. So there's recently a meeting of Alabama Values and the Beacon Center in which they discussed the fact that these fees and fines are so high sometimes that they not only hurt people because, they did something wrong, but they're putting them in financial danger and even poverty because they can't afford to pay off the fines and the fees because they're so high.
And I know Josh knows a lot more about this than I do, but and I'm sure he'll explain it. But what happens is once they get a fee and it begins to build with court costs and whatever, and they get into a situation where they can't pay it, and then if you can't pay it, you're going to end up going to jail. So Appleseed did a study and found that 38% of people that were in that kind of situation committed additional crimes to be able to pay those fees. That's scary.
Josh, we got about half a mintle. What do you think?
No. Oh man, I've got way more than a half a minute.
I know.
But it's listen. I'll just tell people this, okay, to understand it. I had a circuit court judge in Montgomery call me one time and say, "Hey, could you come by my office?" And I went by, and he said, "I want you to look at these fees and stuff that go to court costs right here." He said, "I want to tell you a hard truth about this. I don't know where 75% of these things go. I don't know what this means. 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 But I do know that I've got a homeless man who's been in my court because he has a mental illness. He's been in my court 7 or 8 times now. He owes the state $18,000 off the backs of these fines and things right here. He's never going to pay it off. There's no hope for him ever paying it off. And there's no hope of his family ever getting him out of this situation because we've taxed him on this stuff. Instead of taxing people appropriately in this state, we've just continued to tack on fine after fine after fine to the point where the judges don't know where the fees are going to.
Well, I'm going to have to leave it right there. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas to everybody!
Your home is your most valuable asset. But what if someone tried to steal it from you? Property fraud is one of the fastest growing areas of fraud in the country today.
As a district attorney, I've seen firsthand the devastating effects of property fraud. That's why I'm proud to support the Montgomery County Probate Court's REACT program.
REACT is designed to protect your property and to give you peace of mind. By signing up, you'll receive an email notification if a document is filed against your property.
This program is a game changer. It has the potential to prevent fraud and protect countless homeowners throughout Montgomery County.
So don't wait. Sign up for REACT today and protect your home.
Protect your home with REACT. Sign up today.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. I want to revisit the Education Trust Fund for a minute. You know, this is what pays for education in Alabama. Mm-hmm. And we've had a lot of breaks, especially during the Biden administration and during the COVID pandemic, a lot of money flowing into the state and things being artificially inflated.
Right.
All over the economy and everything else. Now, right now, the ATF is about 5.4% below what it needs to be now. Mm-hmm. And you've got this Choose Act that's going to go into this, pulling out $100 million. And the critics are right in saying this has the potential of dragging down public school funding. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't know, and this is up to you and Susan, Josh, but how do you reconcile? You have fewer dollars for public education, but you're going to give it away to private schools because somebody thinks that parents ought to choose what schools their kids go to, but if you're poor, you can't choose that school. Mm-hmm. It's only for rich people who can afford private schools. I mean, really, let's be honest.
See, there you just said it right there, Bill, because now they're complaining about the overtime, but yet on the other side, they want to take money out of the education. And I'm talking about overtime with poor folk.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the Education Trust Fund, they want to take money out for the rich folks. So, I mean, you can't have it both ways. I mean, it doesn't. They're going to end up bankrupting the ETF over this Choose Act. Josh, I'm going to turn Josh loose on that.
I mean, and Josh, you know, there's people around nowadays that never heard of proration, but I remember
the last time it happened.
I remember proration coming and hitting everybody hard.
Yeah, well, proration, and anybody who's got a child in any sort of a public school knows about the funding drives and buying the toilet paper and buying the paper towels and helping out left and right with a whole bunch of things now in a time when we have a surplus. So you know it's coming very soon with this, and it is a giveaway to rich parents. Let's just be honest, because and it's all in the setup. First of all, there's no cap on income. They didn't put a cap on the income for this sort of thing. And you're going to devote it to, you're going to send the money directly to the private schools out of the Education Trust Fund. I mean, the Revenue Department is going to send them a check for $7,000 to pay your tuition. Yeah. Now, $7,000 isn't going to pay the tuition. No. So what poor family do you know is going to be able to cover the extra cost of that tuition and then cover transportation and not get the free or reduced lunch that their students, that their kids are supposed to get through the federal government? So it's not going to go to those people who need it most, like they're talking about. It's a choose. When they say choose, they've chosen to help rich people is what they've done here. And let me tell you, the biggest problem, not the biggest, but one of the biggest problems I have with this is it's going to go fund. We're going to send public tax dollars to religious-based schools, okay? I don't care that they're Christian. I don't care if they're Muslim. I don't care if they're Hindu. I don't care if they're the Church of Satan, okay? It's all wrong. We should not be sending public tax dollars to an organization that has a religious affiliation. It should not happen ever.
Well, because the families that their children are going to be left in these schools with lower budgets, with lower, quality teachers because the pay is going to go down. They pay the same tax rate, for the most part, as middle income families and upper middle income families. They're paying the same taxes into the same fund, yet the taxes from the lower income folks is going out the door to the rich folks. Meanwhile, their children are not getting the education they're paying for.
Well, and then they end up in religious schools where they're definitely being indoctrinated. But see, we don't want them going to public schools and being indoctrinated.
Because they learn critical thinking in public schools. We don't want that.
That is just totally. I mean, I agree with Josh. The state should not be giving money to religious institutions
I want to say, I just real quick, I want to be clear. I know a bunch of people. I have great people that I know at Trinity in Montgomery,
great.
and I mean some of the Catholic. I mean some just the best people that I know.
I understand.
Work at those places, and they have great intentions, and they do. For all I know, a great job. But we shouldn't be giving them public tax dollars. It should not be happening.
No.
It's a clear violation of church and state.
But that has eroded. So, I mean, James Madison was the one who fought most against this idea of separation, for the idea of separation of church and state. And most people don't even remember what Madison had to go through or why he wanted to do this. What he didn't want was a church telling people what they should and shouldn't do and getting tax dollars for it. Because there was a time in this country by state law, a certain church would have to, get money from the taxpayers. Well, they saw that as a corrupting influence, not only on the church, but on the state. But now, because of the religious zealotry, and I'm not saying these are bad schools or anything, but because of religious zealotry within the right wing of the Republican Party, they think it's okay again to marry church and state. And when they do, you'll have hell to pay, because you won't have a free society and a liberal society or a libertarian society. You will have a church-based society.
You remember why the founding fathers created the Constitution and all of those things? It was to get away from the Church of England controlling the people. Yeah. And now, whoa, where are we now?
Well, it always, that pendulum swings back and forth, and it always stays on the extremes, it seems like.
I'm telling you, they've got it super glued.
Hey, this goes back to the overtime we were talking about. The National Federation of Independent Businesses, they represent a lot of small businesses. They just put out a report that is crazy. 36% of small business owners say they have job openings and they can't fill them. And Alabama has a very low unemployment rate, but it has a fairly significant job participation rate, which is high. And these people, Josh, can't, they're begging people to come to work for them, but they can't find them. And here you go, and it just goes back to the whole thing, working their tails off and to get ahead, and they want to take it away from them. Then other people, they got jobs, but there's nobody to work.
Yeah, I've looked at a lot of these things, and there's there seems to be, it almost seems to be like there's a lag in terms of upping pay for workers, especially at small businesses, to a point where they can meet the demands of things. And a lot of folks that would ordinarily go to work in these small businesses are being held out of it by the cost of childcare.
Right.
That's a big thing, and the cost of healthcare, and the fact that a lot of the small businesses out there don't offer healthcare plans for their employees. And so, that's a huge problem in that industry. There's so many remote jobs and work from home places and all this kind of stuff that you can get online, where you can either keep your kids at home with you and watch them and avoid the $1,000 a week in childcare costs that you're going to pay. And then also get a nice little salary out of it, or some of them are now offering benefits. From work from home, where the small companies, the brick and mortar places aren't. And so, we're going to have to figure out a way to get around that, and hopefully the workforce group that has been put together will start to address some of that, at least in our state.
Well, they are preparing to do that. Let's hope they get it done. We're going to leave it right there for now. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
My personal biggest pet peeve is kids who are not properly restrained, whether that be in a booster seat, a car seat, or even a simple seatbelt. Kids, they become projectiles, and it's terrifying.
It absolutely breaks my heart to know that something so innocent could be punished so severely.
Your children rely on you to be that person that says, no, you need to put your seatbelt on.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. The Southern Poverty Law Center, in conjunction with the American University and their Peril program, have released a study, and it's not just a joke, understanding and preventing gender and sexually based bigotry. And what this really is a guide. It's something that helps counselors, school teachers, coaches, people that deal with youth that are being bullied, that are being discriminated against. And it includes young women. It includes people that are LGBTQ community. And what's happened, Susan, is there's this whole explosion of what they call manosphere, where especially white men are claiming their privilege. And it's, you can hear it in the rhetoric of the disgusting phrase, your body, my choice. And there's a tremendous amount of this going around in our schools and in our communities. And this is a guide, a tool to try to help people.
Yeah, this whole manosphere, you can see all these podcasts where it's all about the men this and the men that and the man cave and all of that. But what it's doing is it's resonating out into society in a very negative, fear-mongering, and hateful way. I mean, look, they've taken away abortion rights. They're looking at taking away the contraceptive rights. They're all aimed at women. Meanwhile, they're targeting the LGBTQ community with fear, hate mongering, shaming, bullying, and all of this. This is a very unhealthy part of our society right now.
I mean, Josh, this is reminiscent of the 50s. You know, it doesn't seem like this should be America in 2024, soon to be 2025. And there's like a sickness in the land right now. That men are being, I got to be macho. You never had to be macho to be a man. Being a man is about taking care of your responsibilities, your family, your friends, your job, all that. That's being a man, not being some jerk,
Yeah, well, I think what we've done is we've misidentified strength for a long time. We've put the wrong definition of strength, and the strongest people that I've ever met in my life were the most compassionate people. That people that would take a stand for somebody being bullied, the people who would stand up and say, no, this is not right. People who are secure enough within themselves not to worry about somebody calling them a name, or not to worry about being, because they have a gay friend that they might be judged as gay. Those are the strong people. Those are the strong. The strong. I wrote a column one time about how Barack Obama, not Donald Trump, was the strongest president that we've had. Because of the way he allowed attacks to roll off of his back, and to be confident within himself, and to take a stand for the least of us, and to do things that benefited the least of us, and to take that focus instead of being so focused on tearing people down, making fun of, for example, a disabled reporter, or the people who are a little bit different in your schools, or whatever. Those are the people who are strong. The people who are strong are those folks. And so whatever, we've somehow or another got these loud group of morons who love to shout and scream about how they're oppressed, and how they're not being allowed to make jokes, and they're not being allowed to do this stuff. And what it really means is that they're too insecure within themselves to recognize that they're themselves. And maybe that gets bleeped, I don't know, but if it does, that's just what they are, and that's who they are. And I hate that we've now identified that as strength versus the compassionate people. And you mentioned the 50s. I watched a lot of Andy Griffith's show, and I got to say, the compassion and stuff that was taught on there was something polar opposite of what we're being taught right now.
It is. Well, a few years ago, and I can't remember the name of the author, wrote a book called Jesus and John Wayne. And it was where many people were looking now to the tough guy, the John Wayne figure, instead of the example of Jesus as far as strength. And even the church, some churches. But I hate to tell people, John Wayne was a fictional character. He was Rooster Cogburn wasn't real. I mean, it's a guy acting. Now, you're supposed to be a tough guy and all that stuff, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about what Josh said about people who have compassion, who have understanding. And this whole deal goes even further when it comes to women in general. in the state of Alabama, it has always treated women with a retro-looking avenue. The way they look at women is they want to poke them into some traditional roles, And when the voting rights for women, the 19th Amendment, Alabama stood against it.
Mm-hmm.
They did not want to give women the right to vote.
Mm-hmm.
And even after it passed and they begrudgingly let women vote, they found ways to oppress women, especially Black women.
Mm-hmm.
But Susan, you and I have talked about this a lot lately, how women's rights have eroded.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, our mothers had more rights than you do.
Yeah. And there's still, it's still the same sentiment in that, the 19th Amendment passed in 1920. We just celebrated a 100-year anniversary. In 2019, they rolled back and did the Dobbs decision. So in our generation, we're going backward. And still in the state of Alabama, a woman only makes 74 cents on the dollar. And I know of an incident recently, a friend of mine went and asked the business owner for a raise. And he said, well, your husband makes enough money. You should be fine. Has nothing to do with her husband.
Yeah.
It has to do with the fact that a woman should be paid the same money for the same job that any man does.
And Josh, again, we're kind of short on time, but this idea that women are less is something that I know my mom certainly fought against, and I'm sure your mom fought against it, and most moms fought against it. They didn't want to be considered second-class citizens, but there's more and more of that today.
Oh yeah, absolutely there is. And then going back to the John Wayne thing and the fact that he was just an actor, I recall the incident with the Native American lady Littlefeather at the Oscars, where Marlon Brando sent her up. John Wayne tried to rush the stage. The big bad man was going to rush the stage and take the Native American woman off the stage. And you're right in the sense that there for a long time there was a consciousness about this stuff that had kind of swept the country, and there was a movement to give women more rights and to make sure that they were paid fairly and they had opportunities. And we made great progress, and now we've started, just like we have in the African American communities and now in the Hispanic communities, we've started to take steps backwards as the white male has become the aggrieved party somehow because equality threatens the structure that was set up here that benefited him.
Well,
and so, here we are.
I am certainly aggrieved at having had all the white privilege that I could be bestowed from the day I was born until right now. I am aggrieved, but we're going to have to leave it right there. You've been watching the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.